Welcome to Conversations at the Crossroads, the podcast where spirituality meets the beautifully messy experience of being human. I'm Jenny, tarot reader, Reiki practitioner, witch, mentor, hairstylist, and the voice behind Conversations at the Crossroads. Each week we gather here at the Crossroads to explore spirituality, personal growth, and tools that help us navigate an ever-evolving human journey. Some conversations will dive into the mystical, others into the practical, and sometimes we'll just sit together through the hard stuff. Along the way, we may explore ideas that challenge us, stories that shift our perspective, or practices that help us walk our path with a little more intention. So wherever you're listening from, take a breath, settle in, and join me at the crossroads. Welcome back to the Crossroads. So, this is episode 22, and if you know anything about numerology, 22 doesn't come around quietly. It's the master builder number. It's one that takes a vision, something that used to just live in your head or your heart, and asks you to actually build it into something that you can stand on, something worth form, something real. Which feels exactly right because this is part 2, the closing half of the beginner's guide to witchcraft that when I teach it in person, I call the witch's threshold. Before we dive in, quickly map out where things live because both of these episodes are dense on purpose and I want you to be able to find what you need later without having to re-listen to everything. Part 1 covered the foundations. That was episode 13. Obviously, I'm a fan of numerology. So that episode covered what witchcraft is at its core, the language around it, and why labels like witch, pagan, and Wiccan are not interchangeable. The different paths people walk, like hearth witchery and green witchery and celestial witchery. We talk about altars and sacred spaces, energy work, including how to sense, raise, and direct energy. We talked about grounding, centering, shielding, warding, veiling, basically all the ways of protection and also cleansing and how they differ. I talked about how to start developing your own personal ethics. So if any of that sounds like what you need, feel free to go back, listen to part 1 first. This episode is going to build directly on top of it. So we're going to cover new ground today. And today's episode is also going to be pretty dense, but in a different way. We're covering actual language and the toolkit of the craft, tools, symbols, a little bit of herbology, working with crystals, something that's huge in my personal craft, working with the lunar cycle, and a respectful look at working with deities. And then we'll finish off by talking about crafting spells themselves, where it all comes together. This one is built to meet you wherever you are, whether you're brand new and need to walk away with real usable foundation, or if you've already got some practice under your belt, I think you'll still find something here worth sitting with. So let's get into it. I want to start with the physical because every tradition tends to build up a sort of toolkit that they have over time. And I want you to know what those things are, what they represent, and just importantly, that you don't need a single one of them to be a real practitioner. But it's good to have knowledge about the things in case you do want to use them for yourself. I want to start with an athame and a wand because they get confused a lot. So let's separate them. The athame is a ritual blade. Its job is directing and cutting energy with precision. Think like casting a boundary of a circle or commanding a working with a sharp, focused edge. The wand is a little softer in function. It's about inviting and channeling energy rather than cutting it, drawing things towards you, calling something in, Both tools point and direct. The athame commands while the wand invites. Their elemental associations genuinely shift depending on the tradition. And this is one of those places where you'll see actual disagreement even among experienced practitioners. Some lineages tie the athame to air and the wand to fire, and others flip it completely. Personally, I associate the athame with air since it's a small blade, kind of like a sword, and the wand with fire. And honestly, that's likely shaped by how deeply tarot lives in my practice. Since in tarot, the suit of swords is air and the suit of wands is fire. And that kind of mapping really just carried over naturally for me in my practice. And I say that not because that's the correct answer per se, but as an example of how your own practice and the systems you already work with will usually influence those kinds of correspondences. So let yours be informed by what you already know and trust, and not just whatever chart you found first. Moving forward, I want to talk about a chalice. The chalice holds water and represents the receptive, emotional, and intuitive principle. The pentacle, that five-pointed star that's in a circle, represents four elements plus spirit together, and it's used for consecrating objects or as a grounding point on your altar. There's a cauldron. And the cauldron is symbolic of transformation or brewing, rebirth. It shows up in scrying work also, going all the way back to figures like Cerdowen, a Welsh goddess of transformation whose myth centers on a cauldron of wisdom and rebirth. Another common tool that people see a lot and associate with witchcraft is a besom, or a witch's broom. These sweep the space energetically before ritual. You can see them hung over doorways for protection. And then also, so if an athame is a blade that is really just used for directing energy, a boline is a blade that's just a plain practical knife for actually cutting herbs or cord separate from the symbolic athame. This one, a boline, is a knife that you use for practical work. The really cool thing is that all of these tools already have a stand-in already sitting in your house if you don't have like Instagram aesthetic versions of them. Your finger can direct energy just fine, like a wand or an athame. You can use a kitchen knife as a boline. A mug that you already love can be your chalice. And you can let a real tool collection build slowly and naturally over years if that's what calls to you. But don't let not having something stop you from starting whenever you feel called to. You can use whatever feels meaningful for you as a tool. Once you have tools in hand, the next natural question is what do you actually draw or carve or trace with it? And that's where symbology comes in. Symbols are their own language, and learning to read a few of them fluently will change how you move through this whole practice. A symbol is basically a sigil that got old enough and shared enough to become common vocabulary. The meaning is already loaded before you even draw it. So, circling back to pentacles, let's start with the pentagram and the pentacle as far as symbology goes, because people use those two words interchangeably sometimes, but they're really not the same thing. The pentagram is just the five-pointed star on its own, by itself. The pentacle is the same star, but enclosed in a circle. Pointed up, it represents the five elements in harmony, with earth, air, fire, water, and spirit at the top, holding all four of the physical elements beneath it. Some people look at the inverse of a pentagram or pentacle and automatically assume that it's something like evil or demonic. Uh, but when it's inverted, it really means that earthly bodily things are being placed above spirit. And that inversion is likely where the symbol's negative reputation kind of started. But that doesn't mean that there's anything inherently negative about the shape itself. It's a cultural read that got attached over time. It's not really inherent to the symbol itself. Context and tradition matter more than orientation. Another common symbol you see is the triple moon. I use this symbol a lot. Um, it's a waxing crescent, full circle, waning crescent, side by side. It represents the maiden, mother, and crone, which is really just a way of honoring every phase of life cycle, youth, fullness, and wisdom as equally sacred. You see it on altars and jewelry consistently, and it's a nice little way to carry lunar work with you wherever you go. And the triple moon is also heavily associated with the goddess Hecate, who is a triple goddess and a moon goddess. So naturally, they kind of associate with her. So that's one of the reasons I personally use a triple moon a lot because of my work with Hecate. The spiral is one of the oldest symbols human has ever carved, showing up in Celtic stonework that's thousands of years old. It represents growth, life, death, and rebirth as one continuous unfolding rather than linear or something that has a hard stop and restart. So that spiral is just symbolic of how things continue to flow. The triquetra, that is the three-pointed interlocking knot that you may see commonly. It's Celtic in origin, and it represents threefold unity, mind, body, spirit, or maiden, mother, crone, or past, present, future, depending on who's using it. But it's a threefold unity symbol. And you don't need to memorize 100 symbols. You can pick 2 or 3 that really pull to you and let them become part of your visual vocabulary and draw them on candles, on paper, on the margins of your journal. Repetition is what gives a symbol its charge. Or you can create your very own sigils, which are essentially just a spell put into a shape that you charge with intention that means something for you, and you can use that over and over. Nobody says you have to use the same symbols that other people use. Just as much as your path and your practice is your own, so is the symbology that you use within it. And if symbols are what you draw onto a working, then herbs are another way to complement what you're doing as well. So I want to get into a little bit about herbs. You can use herbs to burn or dress candles or fill symbols with. It's like a plant language rather than a visual language. And there's lots and lots of herbs. Herbology can be a huge subject just on its own. So I want to keep this very light and basic. Um, I'd rather give you a trustworthy starting handful than overwhelm you with 100 plants that you may never use. So some common ones that a lot of people use, I'll start with rosemary, and that's really great workhorse. Um, it is great for protection, memory, purification. It doubles beautifully as a smoke cleansing herb. I mentioned in the past episode that I don't use the word smudge in my practice because I am not Native American. However, I do a lot of smoke cleansing, and I'm not a giant fan of sage. It clears out all energetic movement, like kind of like a spiritual antibiotics. So I prefer to burn things that call in energy that I'm wanting to work with. And rosemary is a beautiful replacement for that if working with sage doesn't really feel like your vibe either. You can use both, and there's nothing wrong with using sage either. It's just not my thing. But I like to use bundles of rosemary instead of a bundle of sage to light and do a lot of cleansing with. Lavender is peace, calm, sleep. It's very gentle. It's safe and widely available. It's great for using in teas. It's great for using in sachets. Um, it's great for burning. There's lots of uses for lavender. Bay laurel or bay leaves, lots of people are probably familiar with, is great for success and wishes. You can literally write a wish on a bay leaf and burn it to release it. They're used for a lot of like writing and burning things. You can also write things on them and put it in a jar with sugar water for sweetening. There's a lot of ways to use them. Next is chamomile. Chamomile is luck, money, peace, safe and gentle enough for daily use. And teas, again, for burning, I have chamomile incense that I love. It's a really great staple herb. Next is thyme. Thyme is protection, courage, healing, and it's sitting in most spice cabinets already. It can also be great for prosperity and money and abundance working. And finally, mugwort. I just love to throw this one in there because it's a little more unique. It's great for dreams and astral work. It's great for divination, and it's very powerful. But just know, do not consume it during pregnancy or if we're really consuming any herb, we want to make sure that that's safe for us. So, consult a doctor, check up on any interactions before consuming any of the herbs. But just know that mugwort is something that is used often in teas for astral travel and things of that nature. But you can use it ritualistically, just symbolically in a dish. You can burn it. You can put it in a sachet. Many of these things you can mix together. So, if herbs are the plant medicine of the practice, crystals are the mineral medicine, and they carry the same need for respect. Crystals are probably the most visually iconic tool in modern witchcraft and also one of the most commodified. So let's talk about both the magic and the responsibility. A few staples worth knowing. Clear quartz is the amplifier. It's often called the master healer because it strengthens whatever intention or stone you pair it with. Amethyst is calm, intention, and psychic protection. It's wonderful to keep next to your bed. Rose quartz is love, softness, especially self-love. Anything pink, I really love for self-love. And I think it gets underused for that compared to romantic love work. For grounding, something great is black tourmaline. It's a protective heavyweight. It's great for anyone who is energetically sensitive. It can help absorb other people's energy around you if you wear it as a jewelry or carry it with you. Citrine carries abundance and confidence and almost never needs cleansing because it doesn't hold on to negative things. Selenite is high vibration and cleansing, and it can actually be used to cleanse your other crystals just by setting them near it. It cleanses and charges all on its own. It's essentially salt in a crystal. And moonstone, fittingly, ties directly into what we're about to talk about: intuition, cycles, and lunar energy. Here's the responsibility part. A lot of crystals in the commercial market are mined under seriously unethical labor conditions, and it's worth caring about as part of an earth-based practice. Source mindfully where you can. Ask your sellers where their stones come from, and know that a stone that you found yourself on a hike or one that was gifted or passed down to you carries just as much power as anything from a shop. And I really think sometimes more, especially when it's found its way to you because you were meant to have it. But for example, I personally don't buy anything that's lapis lazuli anymore, especially not commercially, because the mines are owned by um, the Taliban, essentially. So buying lapis lazuli eventually funds them over time. I know that's very hard to have ethical consumption under capitalism, and I don't want to take it there, but just as an example of like different crystals to be mindful of where they come from, how they're sourced, and making sure that you're not connecting energetically to anything that you don't want to be. So I mentioned you can cleanse stones, different stones and crystals with selenite, and you can charge them with selenite, but you can also charge them with the moon. And that's a perfect segue into the next part that I want to talk about. Because the moon isn't just a backdrop for that kind of work. It's a whole rhythm of its own. The moon, I think, is the softest, most forgiving rhythm you have access to as a practitioner. You don't need a teacher for this one. You just need to look up at her. And yes, I refer to the moon as a her. And I believe personally that the moon understands cycles more than anyone. So especially if you're neurodivergent and you ever feel pressure or guilt about not staying consistent or not being able to perform all of the time, understanding that you and your practice move in cycles of times when it's very, very full and sometimes when it looks non-existent. The moon understands and works within those cycles as well. So the moon has technically 4 phases, 4 permissions, you could say. The new moon is the dark, quiet beginning. It's very blank page energy. It's the moment where you plant a seed for something that you want to grow. The waxing moon is all about momentum. It's the building phase as the new moon starts to build towards the full moon, and it's beautiful for attraction work. Full moon is peak, completely illuminated, incredible for manifestation because it's at its fullest point. It's good for charging your tools and crystal under her light overnight for divination. Know that some people feel electric during full moons and some feel raw and overstimulated, and both are valid. It is a peak time. It's climactic. And the waning moon is all about release. So really, on a full moon, you can also begin to look towards waning moon energy as a climax before the release. And then the release of waning moon energy for banishing, cord cutting, closing doors, releasing things that aren't serving you anymore. It's one of the most underused phases because lots of people get excited about new and full moon, but I think the in-between waxing and waning phases can be just as potent and should also be honored. And that's what I meant when I said you're cyclical too. You're not meant to just be in growth mode every single day of your life. Some weeks are a waning moon inside of you, quiet, releasing, a little tender. And that's not failure of growth. That's the same intelligent rhythm the moon has always run on. So once you get moving in a rhythm like the moon does, a natural next step could be to start wondering who or what else might be walking that cycle alongside you. And that brings me to deity work. I want to touch on this just very gently because deity work is deep enough to be its own episode or even its own podcast entirely. um, but I don't want to leave it out of this toolkit either. Working with a deity means building an actual relationship, not just decoration on the altar. And also, when people are coming from a place of deconstructing from monotheism, sometimes people think deity work is worshiping or turning yourself fully over to a deity, and it's not that either. I think an important part of deconstruction and developing your own practice is remembering that you are still the center of your practice and you don't have to worship or fully give over to anyone or anything ever if you don't feel so called. But working with a deity, I like to equate it to when there's a project you're working on and you need advice, a lot of times you'll go to an expert in that field. That can be sort of the same spiritually if there is a specific avenue you're working with. You may want to turn to that subject's expert. If you're wanting to walk a new path, if you're in a very transitional phase, maybe a goddess like Hecate, who is very liminal and is one of her epithets is the torch bearer, or the keeper of the keys for opening new doors. She may be a great one. If you are working on love or beauty or glamour, talking to Aphrodite could be a very rewarding thing. It doesn't mean you have to start working with and then always work with the same deity, but some people feel very, very called to stick within one. I personally am a devotee of Hecate, but I still also work with other deities from time to time. Some practitioners are devotional and work closely with one or two deities for years or a lifetime. Others never work with a deity at all, and their practice is entirely energy and intention based. And that's just as complete of a path. Neither one is more advanced than the other. If you feel pulled towards deity work, there's a few signs to pay attention to. You can look out for repeated symbols or animals showing up around you unprompted. Like for me, black dogs was a huge one with Hecate. I have a friend who sees a lot of crows. That for her is a connection with the goddess, the Morrigan. You could have a name or a figure that keeps resurfacing in dreams or books or conversations that just keep popping up around you. You could feel a pull towards a specific pantheon or culture, whether that's a curiosity or it feels like a deeper, purposeful soul remembrance or recognition, like it's something that you were meant to do. The things that matter most here is do some research from actual mythology or cultural context. Second, respect the line between open and closed. Hellenic, Kemetic, Norse, Celtic deities are all generally open to respectful outside practice. Deities from living closed traditions, certain indigenous, voodoo, and some African diasporic religions among them, require initiation, and those deities belong to those communities specifically. Curiosity is welcome, but if you are delving into that realm, know how to do it respectfully. If you want to learn about those things, find a practitioner within that culture and ask if they are open to speaking with you about these things. I just think that that's the most respectful and responsible way to go about those. For what it's worth, I've worked with Hecate for a few years now since my mom passed away. It was a very liminal time for myself, and she just started showing up. And that relationship started small and has built over time through research and small offerings and practices and rituals I do over time, showing up consistently at her crossroads. Uh, Hence, the name of my podcast is a little bit of an homage to the liminality I feel and connectedness I feel to her. If you're drawn to someone, let it build the same ways. You don't have to fully dive in headfirst. You can slowly and respectfully build a relationship with that deity, just like you would a new friend. So, taking everything we just covered, because all of the tools, the symbols, the herbs, the crystals, the moon, they're all really vocabulary, but we can put them together and build something with spellcraft. At its core, a spell is an intention plus an action. That's really the whole definition. Underneath almost all of it are two old principles that a folklorist named James Fraser wrote about over a century ago, and it still holds up completely. The law of similarity, like produces like. A symbol or representation affects the thing it represents. And the law of contagion. Things once connected stay connected, which is why personal items, hair, handwriting, a photograph, they carry so much weight in spell work. So, what does a simple working actually look like once you put the pieces together? Say you want to draw a little more confidence this week. You'd choose a yellow or gold candle for clarity and confidence. Maybe carve a symbol you've drawn into the wax, a pentagram or a spiral or whatever feels right for you. You dress it lightly with a pinch of dried rosemary or thyme. You might set a piece of citrine or clear quartz beside it. You could do it on a waxing moon since you're building something, not releasing it. You'd light the candle and speak your intention out loud, clearly in the present tense, and let it burn down while you sit with it. Or snuff it out and relight it over a few nights if that suits you better. And that can be it. That can be a full spell. Each part of it came from something that we talked about. Open the working with a clear moment. Lighting the candle itself can be the marker. Do the working and then close it. Say something that marks the end for you. It can be so mote it be or and so it is. Sometimes if I'm feeling really spicy, I just end with because I fucking said so. If that's more your speed. Whatever you choose, mean it, because the closing line is what tells your own energy the container is finished and you're free to walk back into your day. So that's the beginning toolkit. The tools, symbols, some herbs, crystals, the moon, a respectful nod to a deity, and the shape of a spell itself. Before I go, a few things I want you to carry forward. Not a recap of every detail, just the truths underneath it. There's no single correct path, and none of these tools are required. They're an invitation. Your intuition outranks any correspondence chart. If something here doesn't sit right, trust that. Consistency builds stronger magic than complexity ever will. And you already had everything you needed to begin with long before the series. All of this was just language for what was already yours. So you've crossed the beginning threshold, or maybe you crossed it a while ago and this was just the first time someone put it into words for you. Either way, you're standing here, and that's enough. Wherever your practice goes from here, whether it stays exactly this simple or grows into something much bigger over years, I hope you remember it was always allowed to be yours. Not mine, not anyone else's you watched online, yours. Before you go, sit with these questions a little bit. As per usual, I have these reflection points or journal prompts. Which of today's tools, symbols, herbs, or crystals felt like it already belonged to you before I even finished describing it? Which phase of the moon do you feel most connected to right now? And what does that tell you about where you are in your own cycle? Have you ever felt a nudge from a specific deity, ancestor, or guide? And what would it look like to explore that slowly and respectfully? And what is one small working you could build this week using only what we covered today? If you'd like to connect with me more or want to see the classes and events I'm running, including the in-person, which is Threshold class, that this two-part episode was born from, you can find me at Hex and Hair on Instagram and TikTok, or my website, www.hexandhair.com. I'd love to hear what your key takeaways from this two-part episode, or if you have any questions, need any guidance, my DMs are open. Feel free to ask away. And as always, as you move through the next week, be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself, and I can't wait to see you again on the crossroads. Bye!